Well, hi there. Welcome to another edition of TokStocks. I'm your host, Keir Reynolds, and today we're lucky enough to have Bruce Nurse, Director and Business Development for PureWave Hydrogen. Trades on the TSX Venture Exchange with the ticker PWH. How you doing today, Bruce?
I'm doing well. Glad to be with you today.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us. Really interested to kind of unpack a little bit around the hydrogen sort of story. It's a theme that we seem to, be hearing, some large capital is sort of going into, and, there's some interesting things sort of going on. We'd love to demystify and kind of unpack a little bit of that with you today.
Great.
Maybe before we get into some of that stuff, why don't we get our 60-second stock pitch out of the way? Does that sound all right?
Let's do it. Perfect.
Alrighty. First question. What is the name and stock ticker of your company?
Sure. It's PureWave Hydrogen Corp. We trade on the Toronto Venture under the symbol PWH, PureWave Hydrogen. Pretty simple.
What's your approximate market cap today?
We're roughly, call it 10 million Canadian, 11 million Canadian.
Okay. And what is PureWave's business strategy?
We're an energy company focusing on geologic hydrogen. You can label it as white hydrogen, naturally occurring hydrogen. Some label it as gold hydrogen, but it's a gas that's subsurface.
Approximately how many shares are outstanding?
Just under 36 million shares, no warrants, no debt.
And approximately what would be owned, what percentage of those shares would be owned by insiders?
Yeah, we're over 50%.
And are you fully funded for the next 12 months?
No, we're not. We are in the process of raising capital.
And what short-term catalysts should investors be watching out for?
We've got an aggressive drill program on a project that we're negotiating on for 2025 to look for naturally occurring geologic hydrogen.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for answering those questions. Now we can sort of get into our regularly scheduled programming. Maybe we could start with a little bit of a background on yourself. Who are you? How'd you get to where you are today?
Sure. Appreciate that. Yeah, I've been involved in the public markets for a long time. I came out of Vancouver as a broker, got involved in doing conventional and non-conventional oil and gas throughout North America. We did a couple projects down in Colombia as well. But over the last, call it 7 years now or so, I got involved in the green energy transition movement. And I got involved in at the time, a private company in Montreal. We took them public on a direct IPO onto NASDAQ. And that is an EV, but an electric powertrain for the boating industry. So it's all about removing gas and diesel from the waterways. In addition to that, I was involved and a shareholder of an EV company out of the UK. We raised a significant amount of money, and they're using hydrogen fuel cells to recharge those batteries because it's an urban delivery truck. Think FedEx, UPS. So that's how I got from oil and gas, conventional, unconventional, meaning coal bed, shale gas, to that energy transition movement and into hydrogen.
Excellent. Now, can you just give us a bit of a little bit more of an overview on sort of hydrogen? Way back when I was a kid, we heard about this company called Ballard Power,
Right.
and we were apparently going to drive hydrogen cars, and water was going to sort of come out the back tailpipe and all that.
Yeah.
But that was that was a long time ago, 30, 35 years probably going on. What's sort of going on in sort of the hydrogen space now?
Yeah. No, I know Ballard out of Vancouver. Very strong, successful company, no question. And what you're seeing with the movement in hydrogen, and I'll go into, if you like, I can go into both manufactured hydrogen and naturally geologic hydrogen. Sure. What you're seeing today is the need for additional energy sources. As we're truly understanding the amount of electricity that's going to be required going into the future, and that is really the AI revolution and the data centers, the computer cloud computers, and the demand for these data centers and energy. And we feel hydrogen is that energy source. So as I mentioned, you've got manufactured hydrogen And there's a rainbow of colors for hydrogen. I'll look at gray hydrogen, which is black, dirty hydrogen, and that is using coal and oil through a processing facility to make hydrogen. So you're using an energy source to make another energy. Very expensive. It's a losing proposition. I don't think it works because you're using tax credits to offset the loss. Now you've got kind of the green hydrogen, if you like, and that's your renewable. So solar and wind. It's difficult because you do have to run that energy through electrolyzer. You can't scale solar or wind. Wind turbines are difficult to scale. Again, expensive. I'll just jump back. And then the other aspect of hydrogen is your blue hydrogen. And that is actually using natural gas. Again, you take energy, natural gas, through a processing facility and converting that into hydrogen. Both natural gas, coal, and oil, very pollutive. You got a lot of CO2. So you got to sequester that CO2 and put it down deep into the formation. What we're focusing on is what Mother Nature has created. Subsurface, hydrogen is the most abundant gas in our universe, been around for thousands and thousands of years. It's how you how do you explore and produce commercially viable hydrogen? And that's the science behind what we're doing currently, looking for geologic hydrogen.
So, yeah, we've heard a lot, over the last several years on sort of this idea of green hydrogen. You explain it quite nicely in that, you're taking sort of like a renewable, you still have to run it through an electrolyzer, hydrolyzer type thing to create hydrogen. So that's being a little bit sort of frowned upon, sort of right now. We're hearing stuff around this natural sort of geologic sort of hydrogen or white hydrogen. You mentioned a couple of different terms there. I guess, how many sort of commercial, is it like a well? Is that what it sort of is? Sort of like a natural gas well or a helium sort of like well? Like, is it similar like that?
Yeah. So hydrogen's a gas, and we're applying oil and gas methods with new technology. And I'll talk a little bit about our technology, but it's the same thing as an oil and gas well. You're exploring, you're acquiring leases here in the United States. You're doing your geological and geophysical work to identify really the rock formation. With hydrogen and helium, you're looking below the sedimentary basin. Sedimentary basins are where you find the oil and gas. We're looking at that source rock, that iron-rich rock that mingles with the water. It's heated, right? You got temperature, you got pressure down deep, depending on where you are, and that's what creates the hydrogen. What we're looking for, and really it's going to be the drill bit. So we're drilling vertical, going down to the granite, to the source rock, the basement, and we're looking for these fractured rocks that may contain a seal that seals or traps that hydrogen. We'll drill down and produce like a regular oil and gas well.
And are there any sort of like indicators, sort of like elements or things you look for? I often sort of see helium kind of mentioned along with hydrogen. Are those two sort of like linked at all, or are there other things that you kind of like look out for?
Yeah, no question. And you typically have helium, hydrogen, nitrogen, methane as gases in the same area you're looking for hydrogen. So what we look for is, we know here in the US, there's been thousands and thousands of wells drilled. It's how you navigate into the data set. We have a proprietary software that allows us to get into the USGS data set or the state-run data sets. And we look at whether oil and gas companies have actually recorded hydrogen shows or hydrogen occurrences. If so, we take that, we do a lot more due diligence on the geology, we look at the areas, and we go out and acquire acreage. And then, of course, we look at the aeromag, we look at the magnetic surveys, do a lot more geophysical work. We've got an area that we're focusing on right now that has 3D seismic, things like that. But yes, you have those gases associated together.
Excellent. And how many sort of like, is this like a big business, sort of this white hydrogen or naturally occurring geological hydrogen? are there a lot of wells that are sort of tied in here sort of globally that are now starting to produce, I guess a cleaner form of
Right.
hydrogen?
Well, here in North America and beyond globally, there's really no production coming out of a well that is producing geologic hydrogen. The only area right now is in Mali, Africa, and that kind of started the whole phase of geologic hydrogen. They found a tremendous source. They're using that hydrogen, so they're producing hydrogen, and they're using that energy source currently in the various communities in Mali, Africa. Now, what you have seen is a lot of companies out exploring and drilling. Australia, gold hydrogen, hit a nice looking well with hydrogen and helium. In France, in Albania, Spain, and of course, we're looking here in the US. And what you have is a private company in an area that we're focusing on in Kansas. It's called the Mid-Continent Rift. This is a company that Bill Gates has put a lot of money into. Breakthrough Ventures, his venture capital arm, put a ton of money in. United Airlines, their VC, Mitsubishi, and other very heavy investors put in about $350 million to explore for geologic white hydrogen. Their post-valuation on a financing in February of this year, north of $800 million. So PureWave hydrogen, we're in the same area with a smaller acreage position, less money, of course, but we're doing the same thing as a player like Coloma, another company called Hytera out of Australia, etc.
Right. And is this sort of like a movement that we've seen in the last couple of years where larger sums of sort of corporate kind of venture capital are going out and trying to sort of, Mali can't be the only place in the world that you're going to find a economically viable well for natural hydrogen.
Absolutely.
Certainly it must be elsewhere.
Well, we know hydrogen's everywhere. And here in the US, we know there's hydrogen, and we're looking at the geology in various states, whether it's the Gulf Coast, whether it's Rocky Mountain regions, Kansas, and in California as well. So we know there's hydrogen there. It's just, the question is, can we flow commercially viable hydrogen? Don't know that yet. We'll have to drill down. But yes, it's here. It's all over. Australia, Europe have hydrogen. It could be the energy source going into the future. As you mentioned, it is the most cleanest form of energy. The demand for energy today is just growing and growing, tenfold over the next couple of years. Goldman Sachs is talking about $1 trillion value on this market over the next few years. I think that's very conservative based off what you're seeing and the demands for hydrogen. And I'll just add this. You've got the U.S. government focusing on naturally occurring geologic hydrogen. Senator Manchin completed a Senate committee hearing 2-3 months ago on geologic hydrogen, bringing in Jeffrey Ellis of USGS, probably he's the promoter of natural geologic hydrogen. And of course, experts from all over the place to talk about naturally occurring geologic hydrogen.
Excellent. So, how we heard, there was this lithium boom in the last, we've had a couple of booms, but, the last 10 years, there's been a lot of sort of advancement. We had this interesting thing where, they were able to basically take old well logs and identify that, some of these sort of wells in the water, contained within it, was lithium rich. And so the brine, so you got lithium brine, as a this DLE sort of extraction technique that comes out of lithium brines, which created this huge mad rush to basically tie up acreage in certain places where there was high amounts of sort of parts per million of lithium. Again, there had been no sort of commercial success. There's now a few companies that have sort of gotten it fairly advanced, and looks like there's going to be imminent sort of commercial sort of production from that. Is this sort of like a bit of a similar sort of thing where you're able to, reinterpret, old sort of drill logs and sort of identify where there might be the type of geological sort of like, the recipe that might indicate that there could be some, some trapped sort of hydrogen, maybe below or within some of those wells?
Yeah, that's part of our geological work. As I mentioned, we go into the various data sets that may show hydrogen occurrences in old oil and gas wells. What we do then is we dig deeper into the logs themselves. Now, the logs themselves don't necessarily state it's hydrogen. They state it's a
Sure.
gas. And again, it's depending on how you read those logs. I'm not an expert. Our team is. And they go into and look at the variables on the lines, on the logs that give some indication that there's gas. And then we, of course, do a lot more due diligence on the geology, looking at the source rock. Is this below the sedimentary basins? Is the gas mingling with the oil and natural gas? These are all questions that we have to answer as we start exploring to pick up acreage. And I think what you're seeing a lot of companies now up in Canada going public, talking about white hydrogen. How I like to look at this is if you go back many, many years to the shale revolution, there's a lot of proponents that did not believe you could produce out of the shales. Today, we know it's a major producer here in the US and Canada and beyond. It's new technology, it's new exploration methods to truly understand how to produce out of the shales, and we think produce out of this hard rock, source rock that we're looking at.
Great. So why don't we vector in a little bit more on PureWave?
Sure.
Maybe you could give us a bit of an overview on where your projects are, how many, size, maybe just give us a good overview on I guess, sort of your projects and how you position the company.
Yeah. Our focus within PureWave Hydrogen is to have a management and technical team that understands what we're doing. I've been involved in the public markets. I'm not a geologist. I scrape the surface at best when it comes to oil and gas. I understand oil and gas, but I brought in a strong technical team and a management team that understands oil and gas methods in addition to how to apply new technology. We've collaborated, partnered with academic, University of Wyoming, Snowfox Discovery, which is out of the UK, Chris Ballantyne, probably the foremost expert on both helium and hydrogen, came out of University of Oxford as a geochemist. In addition to University of California, Davis, a friend of ours, she's a consultant, she's a geophysicist that brings in her understanding on how to look at the source rock and the magnetic surveys, the aeromag and things like that. So it's important to have that technical team as we dig deep into the science. In essence, this is a science project. We know that there is gas down there, but how do you produce this? What's the chemistry? What's the generation of the water? What's the flow? What's the heat? How does that rock mingle with the water? All that is a science project that the technical team looks at. So our focus at the start is Kansas. It's the Mid-Continent Rift. It's a rock formation that flows all the way up into Canada. We acquired initial acreage there of about 800 plus acres. It's next to Paloma, who is this $800 million player with Bill Gates. It's a tremendous area. We like the science behind that. It's shallow. It's only about 1,200 or so feet down, so you don't have significant pressure, but it's an interesting area for us because it has hydrogen shows. There's old wells that had 92% hydrogen down to 45% in different areas. We've got acreage in around that area. We are exploring other areas. We're in negotiations right now on a offtake arrangement from an old oil and gas company, highly successful oil and gas company that has a significant acreage position in an area that has gas analysis of hydrogen and helium at depth. We're looking at about 9,500 to 10,000 feet. They drilled down into the basement, into the granite. So it's hard rock mining, if you like. And they came across some good gas analysis. We like this area. It's a large acreage position, but there's a lot of run room. And the beauty of this area are there's 2 wells that show great gas analysis with hydrogen and helium that are spaced apart, with a third well where they didn't do the gas analysis. They flared the gas. And when you flare gas, you typically are flaring natural gas. Now, there are inert gases associated to this as well. And the color changes. And what we saw was a significant hydrogen flare. So that's an area we're exploring. We're doing our geological work on a couple of other areas in the U.S. Our focus is the U.S. We have been offered other deals outside of North America, up in Canada, places like that. Great areas, no question. Great science, but we're in our backyard is where we're focusing.
Excellent. And so if you were successful in the secondary deal, this would be more like an offtake where you would get the rights to the hydrogen. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we're looking at acquiring 100% of really from a specific formation all the way down to the basement.
Okay. Gotcha. And when did the company go public?
We did a merger with Longhorn Exploration. They were in essence a shell, if you like. I knew the guys. I knew a couple of the brokers with Haywood Securities. We merged PureWave, our private company, into Longhorn, and just recently made the name change. About a month ago now, I guess, to PureWave Hydrogen, and of course the symbol to PWH.
Can you talk a little bit about some of your other sort of team? Who are sort of some of the important team that make PureWave a stock to have a look at if you want to play the hydrogen wave?
Absolutely. Again, you can go to our website, purewavehydrogen.com. Kat Campbell, Ryan, Matt, our technical team, they've all been involved in oil and gas for many, many years. They bring that science understanding. Ryan, for example, is a PhD out of the University of Wyoming. He's got a hydrogen background, of course, oil and gas background. So they apply that knowledge. We have a gentleman that is an advisor, a geological advisor to the team, Matt Silverman, 45 years in oil and gas, has explored and drilled globally. We have another consultant, Estella Iguana from the UC Davis, a geophysicist, and has done a tremendous amount of science here in the United States, alongside her husband, who's a geochemist. So we bring these academic experts, PhDs, to understanding. So that's our team. Robert Price is my partner, CEO. Robert's been involved in oil and gas throughout the Rocky Mountain region, down into Texas as well. He was involved in a kind of a green hydrogen facility in New Mexico, where he sold that off to New Mexico or to Tallgrass. And what they were doing is he bought an old coal fire plant, took natural gas, run that through the processing facility to make hydrogen, and then use that hydrogen as your energy source. And there was some hydrogen that he sold into the marketplace. So he's got that understanding of manufactured hydrogen. And we came together with an understanding that manufactured hydrogen is a losing proposition. Your cost is, $9 to $12 per kilogram. You're selling it at $6 to $7, $8 per kilogram. So you're offsetting your loss with the tax credits from the DOE. Now, with Trump in, who knows if those tax credits are going to stay around? What we're saying,
how do the costs compare, hypothetically with natural, geological sort of hydrogen?
Right.
Because there's not a lot of other commercial wells other than, I guess, one. I guess there's been some modeling and stuff done. Can you share any of that?
Sure. So when you look at your typical if going back to manufactured hydrogen, that's all in, right? You're looking at $200 million to build that facility. Plug Power trades on NASDAQ, PLUG. They got $2.7 billion from the DOE. Now they're restructuring the company and they're building green hydrogen. I know for a fact that they're losing money on selling their hydrogen. Our focus is what's below our feet. So all in, that's exploration, science, drilling. You're looking at about 60 cents to $1.20 per kilogram for the hydrogen. So a tremendous savings. But more importantly, of course, as you develop the field, that we're producing from, the economies of scale comes in and brings those prices down.
Now, I know there can be like geological sort of studies and things that are done for like, how much, oil might be trapped in a formation or how much gas.
Yeah.
Has there been a lot of like geological work to sort of estimate the amount of reserves, potential reserves that there might be of hydrogen in the United States or in these areas in Kansas where you guys are focused?
Yeah. So I'll kind of answer that in two different ways. So Jeffrey
Sure.
Ellis with USGS, one of the foremost experts on hydrogen here in the United States and beyond, he has come out and stated that there's 5 trillion metric tons of hydrogen underneath our feet. Now, it's hard to wrap your mind around that. He's stating that if we produce 1%, only 1% of that number, we have an energy source for many, many years, hundreds of years. Now, what we do is
Really?
in our focus in Kansas, we have hired an independent third-party engineering group to do a resource report. We're not at the place for a reserve report. So it's
Sure.
in essence taking old wells, locations, some of the hydrogen occurrences in this area of Kansas, and using that with their engineering model to come up with a resource. And of course, they really are conservative on those resource numbers, but that's what we look at initially. Until we drill, until we start looking at production, we can't get into the reserves side of it as yet.
In terms of hydrogen, how do you measure it, and what would be like a success? Like if you drilled a well, what are you flowing, and what's considered sort of like good? Do you have any of those parameters?
It's a tough question, but we're looking for at least 100 million cubic feet. Now, I did state kilograms, and everyone in the oil and gas understands natural gas MCFs. So I kind of go back to MCF, and I think that's how we would produce it and look at selling it through that method. But we kind of want to look at areas that may contain a reserve of 100 million plus, 100 million plus of MCF of hydrogen. And that would be very economic. But more importantly, whatever that number is, if we are successful in producing commercially viable hydrogen wherever we are, Kansas, this new area, whether it's California, South Coast, whatever it may be, if we're successful in producing white hydrogen, geologic hydrogen, the amount of exposure, it's a game changer for the industry.
And in terms of these wells, are they sort of like conventional wells, or would you consider to have to be directional, horizontal drilling or like fracturing to access the gas, similar to sort of like natural gas and some of the stuff you talked about with shales, really unlocking that shale with new technology? Maybe you could touch on the technology side of things.
So you're doing a vertical drill. You're not looking at fractures. You're not doing laterals at this stage. Now, we are going down into the basement. We may elect to drill into the granite. So now you're starting to drill into hard rock, which is, in essence, fracturing that rock. But from us, what we've done is we've partnered with the University of Wyoming and their hydrogen department. Strong academic team. We have a new technology. It's patent pending that the University of Wyoming has applied. We have supported a grant, a $2 million grant in front of the DOE, ARPA-E it's called. And that is to look at bringing this technology that provides a seal, a containment for hydrogen subsurface. So we're going to test this technology in areas, maybe Kansas, maybe at this new area or somewhere else. But this could be, in essence, a technology that allows us to put a seal, a containment on hydrogen. Because today, most of the hydrogen kind of seeps through the fractures and the cracks and up into the atmosphere. So depending on when you drill, where you drill, what is the fractured rock? Is there a seal? Does it contain the hydrogen? We really don't know yet until we get down and drill and have that drill bit make those determinations. But we have this new technology that brings in this containment seal. So I like to say that PureWave hydrogen, albeit we're a energy company exploring for geologic hydrogen, we're applying new technology. There's another technology that we'll talk about down the road, but we are applying new technology to the company.
Excellent. So what sort of catalysts should investors sort of watch out for over the next sort of 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, I think, we're in the midst of negotiations on a farm out deal. We have a drill program scheduled. We've got locations planned. And so if we're drilling sometime, there's some weather issues that we have to be aware of. But we're looking at drilling or commencing a drill program sometime in the second quarter, probably early second quarter is what we look at. So that was going to be a significant catalyst in addition to the announcements of this deal, if we do it, or another deal. We're actually got a landman exploring for additional acreage in an area that we like. So all that is kind of some of the catalysts that we'll bring to the table next year.
Excellent. And in terms of cap structure and things like that, what was the last sort of like raise sort of done at, and how much capital, do you guys have in the bank now?
Yeah. So we did a small raise at 10 cents Canadian in the shell at Longhorn Exploration to get everything going. We made the merge of PureWave into Longhorn, changed the name. So we're out raising some capital right now. We've got about just under 36 million shares outstanding, fully diluted, no warrants, no debt on the company. So yes, we're in the midst of raising some capital because we need it for sure.
And what's the terms of the raise?
Well, that has not been finalized.
Okay. Excellent. And how much capital are you guys anticipating to have you announced like a non-broker private placement with this sort of amount of money that you'd be raising?
Yeah, we're raising about $1 million plus if we can. Okay. We have gone out to some parties that have expressed interest, a couple of brokers that are shareholders that want to participate at the next level. So we'll be in the midst of closing that. Probably again, we're backing into Christmas, New Year, end of year. Probably, hopefully by the early January, mid January time frame.
Sure, gotcha. And so the company is not sort of sitting still on its 800 sort of acres. You guys have some other deals on the table. You have other formations and things that you're sort of looking at. I guess without giving away any sort of secret sauce, you were talking about how you need a certain process with, I guess, iron-rich rocks or something. Is that like a serpentinization sort of process or something like that? Is there sort of like a geological sort of event that you're kind of looking for, where there may not be well logs to go after?
Yeah, so absolutely. As you said, there's kind of two aspects to hydrogen, geological hydrogen, serpentinization, radiolysis. And so we're looking at those areas, and depending on the rock and how that rock works, whether it's a rift, whether it's a fracture, all that geology comes into play on where we're going and what we're looking at. But at the end of the day, it's that iron-rich rock, right? It's that granite that mingles with water at certain temperature. It's not 32 degrees.
Sure.
It's 200 plus. You've got pressure that actually builds significant hydrogen reserves. So it's just that mingling, and that's what we're looking for. So we apply all that understanding, all the science to where we want to initially explore and acquire some acreage. And yes, we are looking at, for example, Kansas. There are some additional acreage that we're negotiating on right now. Again, we're in the midst of two big players, Coloma, 800 plus million, Bill Gates, Breakthrough Ventures, another company called Hytera. They did a deal with Fortescue. Fortescue bought 40% of the company, right. And they've picked up a tremendous amount of acreage. They have a drill program planned starting, I think, in the new year, early new year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens because our acreage kind of sits in the middle, if you like.
Is Fortescue pretty interested in hydrogen? I know they're a bit of a conglomerate, do a
Yeah.
bunch of different things where they're trying to greenify a little
Yep.
bit.
Yeah, no, they, from what I understand, they've done the deal with Hytera. It was a mining company out of Australia, Fortescue. I
Yes.
have heard that they are looking in Canada as well for hydrogen.
Yeah.
I'm not privy to all the details of what they're up to, but yes, I think it's a lot like a lot of major corporations, oil and gas,
Sure.
mining, etc. They're looking at that green element to their company, the sustainability. And I think that's what Fortescue is considering here. I know there's some major oil and gas companies now looking at naturally occurring geologic hydrogen. So it's just that sustainability, that new energy source. And what you see here in the US, for example, with Trump's administration coming in January, he's pro oil and gas. And that's going to benefit us because we're exploring for gas. But their energy secretary that's been appointed, I think he's been confirmed, Chris Wright, he's out of Denver here, pro oil and gas, pro fracking, all that. But he believes in all forms of energy. So whether that's solar, wind, nuclear, for us, geologic hydrogen.
Hey, excellent. And just in terms of comparison, you got your 800 million gorilla, $800 million gorilla, I guess, in Coloma. How many acres would they have sort of under permit or under ownership?
Yeah, I think they're roughly in around that 30 to 40,000 acres, something like that.
Okay.
I know Hytera's been aggressive on picking acreage in the Kansas area. I think they're about 55,000 plus acres. So sizable amount than we have for sure. But they got more cash.
Well, excellent. Anything else that you might want to sort of leave us with to sort of wrap up here, Bruce?
No, I appreciate the time and thanks for letting us kind of introduce PureWave Hydrogen. Again, if anyone's interested, purewavehydrogen.com. Our symbol is PWH, PureWave Hydrogen on the Toronto Venture.
Hey, excellent, Bruce. I really thank you for giving us a good sort of like overview on hydrogen as well as getting deep into the weeds here on PureWave. Wish you guys lots of success with your financing and then I guess organizing some drilling there in Q2 for next year. So we look forward to kind of catching up with you, in the next few months and seeing how things are going.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. Have a good holiday season. Take care.
Bye.